All right. Let's see. We should be fine. All right, here we go. Hello, Dr. Jackson.
Hello, Ms. Hudkirk. How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I'm going to turn my volume up a little bit. I am so glad you were able to join us today.
Thanks for
How,
inviting me.
no problem. How's the weather out there?
The weather's actually good. The weather's good.
Is it?
Yes.
That's good. Awesome. All right, Dr. Jackson, we have a few things we're going to talk about today. But first, before we get started, let's tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then I will talk to you. We'll let them know how I know you. So, can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yes. Dr. Marcus Jackson. I'm originally from Lake Charles, Louisiana. Right after high school, I actually went to play college ball in Georgia, Georgia Southwestern State University. After graduating, I actually moved to Atlanta, where I began my work with working with kids, which was my passion. I was a community coordinator for the city of Atlanta, where I designed and coordinate programs for youth at risk. It was there, let me correct myself, that youth at promise. I don't use the term at risk. Right downtown Atlanta, Grady Homes, baby. That's the community where it all started.
All right.
It was there I actually had an encounter with a student who was a player on my football team. And I met with his teacher, and the way she talked to her kids and demeaned her kids to me just blew my mind away. And I immediately enrolled at Georgia State University to work on my teaching certification. I became a teacher. 3 years later, I was Teacher of the Year, one of the finalists in Atlanta Public Schools. Began my assistant principalship in Clayton County Public Schools, where I met you guys, some phenomenal principals, some great administrators, Marcus Fuller, Doug Hendricks, and Anthony Smith. Those were my three mentors. Then I moved there and became a principal at Carver High School and at Boyd High School in Atlanta. Did some great turnaround work. I've been fortunate to turn around all the schools that I was at. And now I'm in Lake Charles, Louisiana, which is my hometown. I moved back here for this position and to take care of my mom, who passed a couple years ago. And I'm currently responsible for 14 schools here in Calcasieu Parish, 2 high schools who just got off the schools failing list, 2 middle schools and 10 elementary schools. And I'm filled with energy, excitement, and enthusiasm. Number one, about being back at home and showing all the kids in the community where I grew up, where forget all these obstacles. I am you, and you can make it. So I'm excited to be here and share some knowledge with some principals and educators and parents about this upcoming school year.
Well, awesome. Thank you for being here. So I want to kind of share with the audience how I know you. You mentioned Clayton County Public Schools, and that is where I initially met you when you were assistant principal at an elementary school. And I was working in central office and as a school improvement specialist, and your school was one of the schools that I serviced. And I always felt like you were a dynamic leader. I knew you would be going very, very far, and you named some phenomenal leaders who we're still in contact with. And of course, Marcus Fuller and I are classmates from the best HBCU. I would just say the best university in the world, Tuskegee University. Yes.
All right.
Yes, TU Tigers. Jam Piper Jam, go Tigers. So you have been groomed by some really, really great leaders. And I'm sure that has attributed to a lot of your success. As we typically as leaders, we have those individuals who have been in our corner that really help cultivate who we are today or even pour into us. So that's phenomenal. So I appreciate you being here today. I kind of want to let the audience know why I asked you to be here. Dr. Jackson is part of a principals group on Facebook group that we are both a part of. And we were, you posted an article speaking about the post-pandemic. And obviously that's a hot topic right now. Obviously everyone is talking about it. And you can imagine, some people might think, well, gosh, how much more can we talk about this pandemic? But because of the complexity of what it represents and what's going on with it, I don't think I think multiple perspectives are needed during this time, and not just one perspective, because sometimes different perspectives can be louder than others and may not necessarily be right or wrong or however you want to look at it. But I think it's important to hear all perspectives and all sides to it, especially for our parents and students and other teachers. And so I asked you to be on because you had some really interesting insights about preparing for the post-pandemic for the coronavirus. And so I want to kind of share with the audience and with our captains, and that's what I call the captains out there. So my captains, you have a role tonight. As you hear something that really piques your interest or a golden nugget, if you can capture that in the chat room for all those who may be tuning in at some point. So as Dr. Jackson drops those golden nuggets, reiterate that as keywords pop up, put that in the chat box for me. And then we also have 3 polls we'll do tonight. So the first one I want to start off with, and someone can type this also in the chat box, captains. My first question before we get started is, how many parents, if you are a parent currently right now, how many of you plan on sending your students back to school this upcoming fall? You can put yes, no, or undecided. So if you all can keep that going for a minute, and again, put in the chat box, how many parents plan on sending their students back to school this upcoming fall? Yes, I do, no, I do not, or undecided. And so we'll look at those and kind of talk about that. So if you'll go ahead and put those in there, I truly, truly appreciate that. Okay, so one of the things that, and also go ahead and share, make it a watch party, guys, make it a watch party. If undecided, I see some undecided on there. Go ahead and make this a watch party and share it on your Instagram and on your Facebook and on Twitter. Okay, so again, going back to the article, Dr. Jackson, you talked about addressing the mental wellness of principals, teachers, and students. You made the first statement in your post was, the first day of school for the 2020-2021 will be dramatically different this year. So for those who did not get to read your post, can you elaborate on what you meant by that?
Yes, that actually, that blog came about. Of course, now I'm working at the central office as a director of curriculum instruction for our zone schools, our low performing schools. And just as we always do in education, when this pandemic hit, it hit everybody in the stomach. Nobody knew it was coming. It was a knockout punch. Nobody had time to plan for it. I remember like it was yesterday, we found out at 1 o'clock on a Friday, and we had to tell our parents to hit the news. So all of a sudden, nobody's going back to school. We immediately went into, how we was going to feed the kids, et cetera. And then immediately, everybody jumped into the teaching and learning, which I feel is a mistake in school. People ask me, Dr. Jackson, how have you been able to turn around some of the lowest performing schools and some of the roughest neighborhoods in Atlanta? What were some of the things you've always done? If you had one thing to tell us, what would that be? And that would be, I always had a major focus on the people as opposed to the points and percentages. I always uplifted the people as opposed to solely focusing in on the points and percentages. The introduction of that article spoke about this school year is going to be drastically different. Yes, now that energy, that excitement, and that enthusiasm is going to be there. The teachers are going to be ready to get back. The principals are going to be ready to get back. And the students are going to be ready to get back. And best believe those parents are going to be ready for their kids to get back. But along with that energy, excitement, and enthusiasm is going to come a great deal of fear, anxiety, and stress. That's coming with it. And our teachers, just as us adults, are going to have what I call the why, what, when syndrome. And nobody's going to address that. Why did this happen? We don't know the answer to that, but we better get ready to answer that, because our kids are going to ask, and they're going to have a plethora of preconceived notions. What happened? And when is everything going to come back to normal? Now, people think that we're going back in September. August. But currently, right now at the district level, we're planning in 3 phases. How is this going to look if we go back and everything is normal? We got that plan. Another plan is, how are we going to stagger? Are we going to be on half days? Are we only going Monday and Wednesday and Tuesday and Thursday? That's a whole nother plan. And then what if we go back and it spreads again? Because I think that second wave is coming and we have to go strictly to e-learning, kind of like what we're doing now.
Right.
And we're prepared for all 3 of those. So that's a whole different thought process than just getting some school supplies together and getting some school clothes together in school. And we have to start that process now. We're working on that now. So the beginning of the school year is going to be drastically different this year, because you don't know which one of those situations we're going to fall into.
Yeah, so that's been really interesting. I don't know if your state has provided any direction with that. I know we've had a lot of conversations at the district level about what that will look like for our schools. And we're, like you said, we don't know. There are a lot of unknowns, but we can't wait and get a plan of action together. And we have to be very diligent in getting that done. Most schools and districts start planning in the spring for the fall anyway, or even sooner. But we're planning for something different. And so what we're finding too is that in many cases, if you didn't already have things in place, that's showing as well.
Oh, yes.
Other things, which also leads to the, inequities that we already knew that were apparent, but it's just really like my favorite line, we're showing our slip a little bit. So you're having to deal with a lot of those things and then trying to make sure that all stakeholders are part of the decision. Because, for example, going back to school, you can't really have conversations without finding out from parents, like how many of you are going to really send your students to school so that we can plan appropriately. So we've had a lot of different conversations about how we're planning those different scenarios. And some state departments around the country have put out things and some have not. And they've presented some different scenarios. And I think that's good because they're being transparent. But then how do you really, but how do you really prepare for that though? So you work with principals. What has been your conversation with principals as they begin to plan? Because typically we're already planning our schedules, our end of the year, our professional development, how we're just our protocols and procedures, starting our initiatives. What are you telling your principals are their first steps in preparing for next year?
Well, actually, just as I've always done, I've always go to the effective domain first. Effective domain deals with your values, your motivation, your attitudes, your stereotypes, and your feelings. And right now, there's a sense of uncertainty and a sense of confusion. So actually on my end, I'm not putting a plethora of things on my principal's plate right now, but from the district level, we're actually meeting with them weekly to sort of inform them on what's coming down the pipeline. Let me tell you something about principals and teachers. When this happened, without any direction from the district level, teachers and principals automatically went into hustle mode. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna reach our kids? What am I gonna do with our kids? So this happened on a Friday to just about everybody. Man, you talking about Monday and Tuesday of the next week. You got teachers on the phone. Yeah, you got teachers on the phone calling their students, seeing how their students doing, seeing how the parents doing. So this whole process needs a plethora of input, an abundance of input from the teachers and from the parents' perspective. So that's kind of what we're doing now from a district level, is actually feeding principals, having those principals go back to their leadership team meetings, and they are actually bringing information back to us and say, wow, we didn't think about that. And this is how we can serve this school or this community different, because it's a whole different ball game. The needs at Rex Middle School is totally different than over here at Point South Middle School in Kendrick is a whole different set of needs over here. So I
And
have to get
Middle. Forest Park, yeah.
a total different ball game. So the first thing I'm actually doing with my principals is I ordered them a book by a great friend of mine, Dr. Earl Suttle, Stress to Bless. And that's the first book study we're doing. I don't want to do anything on the professional learning community. I don't want to do anything on content.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do anything on school turnaround. Principals, I need your mind to be right.
Yeah.
I need your mind to be right, because right now, nobody's mind is right.
Right.
I went to the mailbox like 8 times yesterday just to get out the house.
Right.
That's odd.
Right.
I'm calling my pastor. I'm calling my pastor 2 or 3 times a week just to see what's going on, and just from my spiritual feeling. And I'm reading on stress and mental wellness as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something I'm pushing out to my principal. And of course, they're taking that spiritual push, and they're taking that mental health push, and they are actually, and the guidance from those 3 scenarios I told you about, and how we're going to continue summer learning. And they are putting their plans of action in place right now as we speak.
Yeah, you said something really profound earlier in the conversation about not starting the effective domain and not starting off with just instruction. And that's one, yeah. And I know there are districts that did that. I know for my own children, that was it was like grades is still as normal. We're in finals week right now doing end of year assessments. And nothing against them, but one thing I can say about the district that I currently work in, all the way up, because we had about 2 or 3 weeks before spring break, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the only goal that was communicated, which total support of, is just get them acclimated, get them, address those concerns, have, find the children, see what the needs are. We had over, the first couple of weeks, we had over about 150 students that we didn't know where they were. And so it took everyone, my paraprofessionals, everyone who didn't have a classroom, a homeroom, they were on trying to call, parents and say, hey, what are your needs? Why aren't you on? What can we do? Parent liaison in, helping them get connected with internet, media specialists making house calls. Let me help you get technical assistance. It really took all hands on deck. And one thing I tell my staff all the time, which we had a really, pretty good turnout, with the exception of those who truly we just couldn't get on because they didn't have devices. It also showed the types of relationships that teachers had with students prior to it happening. Because I truly believe that the reason why they were so successful, even though it might have been slow in the beginning, is because they had really great relationships with them.
Oh, yes.
And so where there's a will, there's a way. Like they found a way to get on. And when we decided, they can't have a device, let's make packets. At least they were sending pictures, uploading Dojo or in email or the Google Classroom, and it really made a difference. So the relationship piece. So talk a little bit about that.
Relationships are key. Currently, right now, nationally, there are about 33% of students who are logging on and actually doing their assignments, actually on a national level. That is very low. And in some districts, it's as low as 10%. That is very, very low. And like you said, that is directly attributed to the relationships that teachers form with their students. At one of my schools, Dr. Detricia Lewis, she's been using is it YXL, XL, some type of program, Excel math, and she had these contests. And this lady had a 98% weekly rate on IXL because a couple things. She turned it into a contest with the group of students in her class, and she gave 5 assignments that 5 questions that these students had to do after school. And IXL can be accessed through your cell phone. And I'm over here off Bankhead Highway serving Roland Ben's apartment, one of the most poverty-stricken areas in America. And this teacher has a 98% success rate and attendance rate online with students on their cell phones. Everybody has a cell phone.
Everybody has a cell phone.
And so I used to get several calls from parents why are you giving my child is begging me to get on my cell phone every night? I'm like, ma'am, give it to him for 10 minutes. For 10 minutes and let him do his assignment. We have a contest going on here at school. So parents, and if teachers have that relationship, a child will bug their parents to death to say, hey, let me log on. I need to log on. And that's simply because of that teacher. So that's where it starts first.
It really does. And so one of the things that that we talked about is making sure that it's going to be even more important when we go back in the fall to maintain those relationships. You know, it's unfortunate because a lot of the students and teachers and families felt that there was no closure from the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing about it is that those students who are returning, we really need to take advantage of that time to really build those relationships. And the good thing is also a great school, students will not only have a great relationship with their teacher, their home teacher, but with other adults in the building.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we found is, you know, because we're such a close-knit family and so close, and in terms of, it doesn't matter if I'm not your home teacher, I may reach out to your parent. It's almost like a village, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. That's going to be even more important, that it can't be that I'm the only one that knows who my student is. Other people have to know who my child is, you know, who those students are in my classroom.
Correct.
So, yeah. So that was just something that I really wanted to really touch on. And again,
that's tough, Doc. That's tough to establish that on a computer.
Yeah, it is. It is. But you know, one of the things
in this day and age, we can't. I mean, you talking about, we almost to a point where you can't give a hug. I can't give a fist bump. Yeah. I can't give you a dap, what's up, a chest bump to my 5th grade boys.
Right.
So we're in some very, very challenging times, but guess what? We as educators, we make it happen, man. That's what we do. That's what we do. And my brother Dr. Chika Kaur said something. We because a lot of us Black educators, we talk.
I saw that.
Dr. Chika Kaur, who's speaking tonight on Black Educators Rock, he actually said a prayer. And in his prayer, he said, Heavenly Father, we get your message and we're pregnant with possibilities right now. And then he asked for guidance. And I extended upon that. I was like, man, I like that. But when you're pregnant, certain things must take place in order for that child to not be malnutrition and for that delivery to be successful. Absolutely. And that parent must have a specific plan in place for when that child arrives. And I took that thought process into, how is this going to look in August? How is this going to look in September? Because we're in our final pregnancy stages right now, and our students have been out of school for about 5 months now. By the time we go back.
And the womb has to be healthy, right? In order to carry it. So the person carrying has to be, and not just physically, but mentally.
Mentally as well.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Has to be mentally. So those of you who are just joining us, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Marcus Jackson, who is an internationally recognized educator, professional author, and expert in curriculum and instruction and school administration. His work has spanned 20 years, and he is distinguished by increased student achievement and just great work all around. And I have been following you for a while, and it's so great to see you grow in your element. So you're truly in your element. And before we leave, you got to tell everyone about your book that you wrote as well. And then we got to tell them that story too. So before we leave, we'll give you time to talk about that book that you wrote and why you wrote it, okay? So don't let me...
Was that the children's books, the first one I wrote?
Yes, the children, yep. And so don't let me forget. Don't let me forget, because that was a great book. So don't let me forget. Okay? Okay, awesome. So we're going to go on to the next topic. And captains, if you have any questions, again, share this, make it a watch party, share this, go ahead and share it on your social media page. If you have any questions for Dr. Jackson, go ahead and put those in there. I'm kind of watching right now. And some people are saying hi to you, Dr. Jackson.
Tell them hi. Again,
yes, and so I see some current CCPS staff members. And so if you all make sure you wave to Dr. Jackson and share it, make it a watch party, share with everyone. So we're excited to have Dr. Jackson here. All right, so Dr. Jackson, the other thing I kind of wanted to touch on was we talked about a little bit, the role of social emotional learning for students, staff, and parents. So what are some things that you are currently doing specifically? If I were a new principal and I just finished my first year and I'm trying to figure out how am I going to support that social emotional learning in my school next year, what would be some specific things that you could tell me that I should think about first? And then, going back to what you said, for example, not jumping in, like you said, with doing instruction, or being very intentional about how to infuse that. So what would you say to a first or not even first year? Because I could be a veteran. This is new for everyone.
Yeah,
and I may not have been focused on social emotional learning, because I was looking at a study yesterday, and it's about even. Some schools have it in their schools, or they focus on it, some don't, and some don't really know how to start. It's like 30-something%, evenly amongst those. So what would you say to those individuals?
First of all, in order for your school to be really functioning at a high level, specifically in challenging schools, the social emotional curriculum must be embedded in the core of your school. That has to happen. One of the programs that have been very, very successful with me was the Second Step social emotional program. And there's actually a curriculum that there's an actual curriculum to it.
Type that in the chat box for me, captains.
Yes, Second Step social emotional program.
Social emotional
and
program.
that curriculum really outlines what we should be doing every single day in regards to tapping into our children's mental health, conflict resolution, what to do when I'm sad, what to do, how do I gain resiliency, resolve, intestinal fortitude. And those lessons are kind of lengthy, but they've condensed those to about 20 to 30 minutes a day. That has to become the norm of your school. At the schools that I was at, it became a norm, and students look forward to it. I'll never forget at one of my schools, which was a hot elementary school, highly gang infested areas. We had a blood in the crypt, kids in the 5th grade about to fight in the hall. And one of the students said, hey, a girl intervened, and she said, hey, that is not a positive way to express your feelings. There are better coping mechanisms that you can use. And the boys stop and they say, you're right. And they say, soon as we get to the room, I'm going to the feelings jar. And I was like, what the heck? Now, these are two high flyers.
Right.
These are two high flyers. Blood Crips. I'm talking about they daddy and uncles are killers.
Okay.
So these kids say, hold on. I'm gonna take this to the feelings jar. So I said, I followed them in the classroom. They got an index card.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote their feelings. They put it in a jar, which was nothing but a pickle jar, which had feelings drawn on it, and it was decorated neat. And the teacher was like, wow. So they dapped each other up and they sat down. So I was like, what is this? I asked the little girl. And she said, well, when we get upset or agitated with each other, we've been taught specific coping mechanism. One of the things is your feelings must be heard, because that starts the conflict when people feeling as if they're not being respected, right, or they're not being heard. This is a 10-year-old girl talking, counseling, and therapy session talk to me.
Wow.
And I said, okay. She was like, well, come back the next morning. We're going to pull from the feelings jar. So those little boys talked, and one of them pulled and he said, hey, man, you said something about my mom. She just lost a baby. So now my little brother dead, another kid, and all the other kids said, so what are you going to say, Eric? And then Eric said, man, I'm sorry. I apologize. Please forgive me. And then everybody clapped. And I'm like, whoa. And then he got a chance to express his feelings. And I'm like, wow. So we implemented that at our school. And man, I'm talking about offers, referrals, 45%. Because kids were taught that. They come to school only knowing what they know.
They know, right.
And that's in the neighborhood. And they're going to bring it right to school unless we teach them better. And so
Right.
that second step program, and another one is capturing kids' heart.
Yes.
That was one that we actually
That is
started
good.
here when I moved
Write
back
that
to
down,
Louisiana.
Captain.
And that has been a game changer.
Yeah.
First of all, the kids, they create the rules.
Mm-hmm.
In education, we are so used to telling kids, don't do this, you can't do this, you should use this, you can't do this. That is backwards.
Yeah.
Once again, I'm quoting my brother, Dr. Chika Kaur. Rules without relationships
Mm-hmm.
equals rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say that again. Rules without relationship equals rebellion. So if you make kids a part of the very system that we have them in, they'll take ownership of it. And then they start holding each other accountable. Giving you another example, at one of my middle schools, one of the teachers said something to the student, and all the students did like this. Well, I was at the training with the teachers. That's a foul.
Mm.
That's a foul. And
Something
the
they all
students
can
did it
relate
to
to.
the teacher. The students did it to the teacher. So the teacher's like, what did I do? Kids raised their hand. Tough neighborhood now, middle school, 7th grade.
Right.
Student raised their hand. Teacher said, what did I do wrong? One of the students said, you was very sarcastic when Tracy asked you for the answer, or she didn't have clarity on something, and you was very sarcastic with her, which could consequently turn her off and not make her want to ask you another question again. And we felt that you was very rude. And I was like, whoa.
Which we know happens.
Yeah.
They're human as well, you know.
But that environment was created, and during that particular lesson, which I just went to do an observation of the lesson, they had about 2 or 3 fouls that was committed between students and some with the teacher, and it was nonverbal. And the child had to recognize it, the teacher acknowledged it, the students acknowledged it, they apologized, and they kept it moving. But that was created, and capturing kids' heart brings your heart, your empathy, your compassion for each other into the classroom, and adults need to be trained on that first.
And that's what I was going to say. You know, I know a lot of schools and districts are making plans to try to implement, because even for myself, I was looking at, I'm very familiar with capturing kids' hearts, and I was even looking at restorative circles. And so I was trying to figure out how can I knew it was important for us to create an environment where students and staff members could express their feelings, especially because for all we know, they could be bottled up from March 16th all the way until we start school, because they may not have had an outlet to do so. And so there might be a lot of things that students and staff members are holding on to. And because typically our schools are those safe environments where students are sharing anyway, but there needs to be time in the day where we provide that opportunity for students to express themselves. I love the fact that everyone's held accountable, and even for teachers, most importantly, that they are secure enough to allow students to check them at points. You know, it's like the same thing as a parent. You know, our children, your dad, you know, I'm sure your daughter has been times like called you out on something like that. That's not cool. Like, you know, and then you could either react to like, I'm the parent, you know, you don't tell me whatever, or you could be that parent that says, you know what, you're absolutely right. And you're teaching them how to respond when something's foul, when you get a foul. But one of the things that I do know is I know a lot of schools and districts are probably planning for students, but the staff part is going to be just as important, because my dad has this saying, you know, you have to be able to fill your cup before you can fill the cup of others.
Yep, exactly.
So, you know, one of those things that I know is going to be important, because we have to also understand that there are adults that are going through this as well, that is affecting their families, their households. And we have to be able to train them, or one, pour into them, and then train them how to pour into someone else. I think a lot of times we think because you're an educator, that should just come automatically. But we also bring our own mental models. Peter Senge's, you know, one of the 5 disciplines is mental models, and how we bring those our upbringing, our experiences, and it comes out in our teaching or how we interact with other people into the classroom, that's something that we'll have to investigate for ourselves to make sure that we're all hearts or all minds are clear. So when we go in and teaching students, then we can do so adequately. So what do you think
Correct.
about that?
That is actually great. Matter of fact, that's one of my secret weapons. And I'm just giving you a nugget as a turnaround principal, and you're doing the same work. That is something that I advise to my principals, and that is something I did with my principals. Our schools were D's and F, and our principals were really thrown off by my first time with them. I didn't talk about no test scores. I didn't talk about no standards. I ain't talk about culture and climate of school. All I did was focus on their mental health. Now, even when I was a principal, Ms. Hudkirk, leadership retreats are very common. Those
Yeah.
usually are about maybe 2 days or maybe 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
But my first day, that full day, is actually focused on our teachers' mental health. I actually bring in my expert, Dr. Earl Suttle, who wrote the book about stress. And we talk about family. We talk about what's important to you. What are some of the issues and concerns that you have personally that are preventing you from getting to where you need to be as a person, not a teacher, but as a person. We walk out of that first day event service with a full-fledged wellness plan, with a mental health plan. We write a note to ourselves that what we're going to accomplish. Yes, what we're going to accomplish that year. We write a note to our future self on where we're going to be in the next 4 months. And you give that wellness note, mental and spiritual and physical wellness note, to your accountability partner. And that accountability partner must check in with you every week to see if you're still following everything that you were just taught into this mental, spiritual, and physical day. Everything. Are you, Ms. Hudkirk, are you doing, what did you eat today? I'm sorry, I ate leftovers. Well, you know what? I'm actually gonna go to Subway and I'm gonna bring you a salad tomorrow, because I know how it is as a principal, you get so busy. I'm gonna make sure that Uber Eats drop you off a salad tomorrow, so you will have time and you don't have to eat in the cafeteria. So we actually, that is the first day. And guess what? When our teachers came back, I did the same thing with the teachers, getting their minds ready for the kids. And then the next day of pre-service or the leadership retreat, then we delve into the data and the plan of action and what we're going to do for culture and climate and things of that nature then. But that is where you need to start going into next year with your teachers and your principals, mental well-being. Of course, I'm dealing with principals now, so that's my main focus. And when I jumped into this position, the first thing I said is nobody never was concerned about me as a principal. Nobody never asked me, was I okay? So every month I do an "Are you okay?" call with my principals. Hey, are you okay? Well, what do you need, Dr. J? I don't need anything. I don't need nothing. I'm just checking on you to see, are you okay? And from that, we formed a relationship where, man, we got major stuff going on with our principals. Possible cancer. You got family issues going on. So now mentally, I know, hold on, I'm gonna stop by your school. And matter of fact, you know what? You go home these last 3 hours of the day, go take care of your mom. I'm gonna finish this day off for you.
Absolutely.
And so those are some of the things that I'm doing to my principals. And guess what? Guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna do it for their teachers. And guess what those teachers are gonna do? They're gonna do it for their students. But I was actually trained for all of this. And as I said at the beginning, I focus on uplifting the people as opposed to only focusing on the points and percentages. And when the people rise, guess what happened with the test scores?
Yep.
They jump.
They jump.
And you know, you was there with me at Kendrick, man. We went from a 2-star school to a 5-star school. I'm talking about all A's and B's, right there in the hood. Some of our kids on first 48 and all that. 93 in ELA, 94 in reading, math, 88. Math, 88 in the hood? 82 in social studies, 81 in science. Who teaches social studies and science? And we're in the 80 percentile? Come on, man. But I focus on the students first. I'm sorry, the teachers first, and that translated to the students,
Yeah.
which led to student achievement.
And that's so important. Obviously I am a principal mentor, and that's one of the things we do. We check, especially during this pandemic, we check in every week and just say, like, how are you doing? And even for my own building, when the first week, it was like, okay, we got to find out who's missing. Let's do a check-in form, and we're going to check in. And then, here I am telling them, okay, when you do your virtual lessons, the first thing I want you to do is just ask the children how they're doing. Before you start instruction, check in with them. Get a temperament of how they're doing, how things are going. Let them talk a little bit with each other. They miss each other. And then I realized, after being on one of my staff grade level meetings or department meetings, a teacher expressed some anxiety. And then it dawned on me that's when it dawned on me that I have adults that may be experiencing this. So then I told the principal, I said, you know what? Let's add to that form. The first question is going to be, how are you doing? And then how can we assist you? And so then every week we check that form. And if someone was kind of off kilter and didn't really say, I'm not great, I'm whatever, they got a personal call. Not just a call, like, I have to see your eyeballs. Like, get on the Zoom, or at the time, or get on Google Meets. I want to see your face, and let's talk. And let's talk it out. Let's talk about what. And what I found was it was my extroverts that were having more difficulty than my introverts. Because I'm thinking my quiet ones are going to be the one. No, it's my ones who are the life of the party, those who are normally in the mix and doing things and out and about. They were struggling a little bit with this. And so I can appreciate how you also, because you are dealing with principals, how you are checking in with your principals and saying, how are you doing? And I really like the accountability partner piece. I do that. I do really like that, because we talked about doing something similar in our building just with the staff, and just having accountability partners with the staff members. And so that's something that I think a administrator can really take back to their building and really work.
Oh yes. And like in this digital age we're actually dealing with now, and I got this from my brother, who's a online professor at Harvard, and I work with him a lot, and he does a lot of online teaching. He's been doing this since 2004. Matter of fact, we're behind the curve with online teaching. We got caught with our pants down. It was, and it's ugly. And the kids have been begging us to give them something different instructionally, but we didn't listen to him. But he begins his sessions, once again, he has a 98% attendance rate from his students in the hood. But he comes in and they choose a song. Each student is going to choose the song that they're going to play as their introduction to get crunk on before he started teaching. And it was so funny because one of the kids chose Blow the Whistle by Too Short. And he played it, but he played the instrumental. And it was great that he acknowledged that child who said play Blow the Whistle. But it was funny because the kids knew the song. He was culturally connected to the community.
Right.
And he played it. In addition to that, the next thing he did was give me a pulse check. On a scale of 1 through 10, how do you feel right now before I teach this algebra lesson? How do you feel? Now, what he did there was powerful. Yeah. If you would ask that in a classroom setting, you'll get no response, especially from the boys. But on the keyboard, you can tell people exactly how you feel.
Exactly.
So everybody on a scale of 1 through 10, 10 doing great. You had a couple 10s, you had an 8, and I think he had a 4 and a 2 on there. And that's an indicator right now that I got to call you and check up on you after this math lesson to find out what's going on. You know what? I might have the expert, my counselor, give you a call and see if there's a need for you and your family that we might be able to address. So that accountability partner is peace, and that's a great way to do it digitally.
That's awesome. That's super cool. I mean, I like that because we did a mentor a couple of years ago, and we did a different version of it this past year where we identified those students who just needed that extra adult interaction, and every adult in the building had a student mentee, and
Yep.
so it makes sense to have one even for your teachers, and then also even for principals. And I think we naturally do it because we all have those principles that we kind of go to and we speak with, but being intentional about that, I think that's
Yes,
even
yes.
better. I think the intentionality is what the key is for that.
And that was key. When we walked out of there as principals, we had an accountability partner, and they grew closer with that particular accountability partner. They did family outings together. It was something cool, and you had somebody that you can share your struggles and your stress and your strain with, because who principals have to talk to? Nobody.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
each other.
But
But
each
each
other.
other. But then usually we have to wait until a principal's meeting once a month to do it.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are just joining us, we are speaking with Dr. Marcus Jackson, who is internationally recognized educator, professional author, and expert in curriculum instruction. He's currently in Louisiana, and we're speaking with him about a couple things today. We talked about the post-pandemic and strategies that we're utilizing in schools. And we do have a couple questions. We'll get to that. And then we're currently talking about mental health awareness and how that will be impactful and important as we enter in the upcoming school year. And I asked initially for a poll. If you haven't done the poll, my first poll question was, if you are a parent, how many of you do you plan on sending your student back to school this upcoming school year? Yes, no, or undecided. My second question for you, since we've been talking about social emotional learning, is how many of your schools are currently implementing social emotional learning in your buildings? And if not, do you have plans on doing so, whether you're a teacher or administrator, or if you're a parent and you are aware of social emotional learning strategies that are currently occurring, put that in the chat box for us and let us know. Like I stated earlier, I know our school district has decided that all schools will have social emotional learning training. So we've been already created our teams to be trained and come back to our school. So I'm really excited about that because we were already talking about how we're going to address that. Even our parents, we had suggestions from parents online. Like I see one of my parents, Janae Fowler, hi Ms. Fowler, who is part of our PTA, and they've been involved in really having some good ideas about how to create closure at the beginning of the year since students didn't get at the end of the year, and how important they think that is for their students. So we've been involved in those types of conversations, and so we welcome those, and it really takes a village to get all that information. Kind of going back, Dr. Jackson, we had one question. Are school districts considering hybrid options, some students being allowed to do school year from home or for 2021? Have you all talked about that?
Yes, that's an option. That's an option as well. And that's fresh off the press. We actually discussed that actually yesterday, because for some kids, this is better. This is better. You don't have to be bullied. You miss over the whole teenage stage where you shy about your height, your weight, and you can actually just do your schooling virtually. Some people thrive in that particular area. So what we're actually doing is actually doing a survey and actually asking parents, hey, this online experience, has this been something good for your child? Has this been something good? And how has it been beneficial for them? And you can actually go to Zoom. They're logging in every day. They've been they've been active. They're doing their assignments. And you can actually see that. And you'll be surprised. Some kids are actually really doing very, very well online as opposed to face-to-face. But then once again, there's no substitute from being right there with that particular teacher. So there's a fine line there, but yes, we are taking poll, and that actually is an option. That is an option.
Yes.
And of course, that hybrid schedule, as I mentioned, we're actually already developing that. There are a couple different scenarios for that hybrid schedule. Going to school Monday and Wednesday, Tuesday and Thursday, and then on that Friday, another group coming on a Friday, another group come. We got a variety of things that we're actually ironing out. But yes, we're
Okay.
planning that right now.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, we're talking about that as well in our county. We have a team, and what I appreciate about the team is not just made up of district personnel. They've included administrators, teachers,
Yep.
support staff, everyone, and so that way, one, that's buy-in, and two, I think there's strength in numbers. Obviously, you know, the more different perspectives you have, the better. And then it was really awesome because some individuals on these different teams have family members in other countries, and they're sharing how they're dealing with the pandemic and how they're structuring their school days as well. So it gives us a little more insight. So yes, we're also looking at a different hybrid schedule. And you made a good point. Not all students do well online, because just the other day, one of my teachers was sharing how he has a student who's bright student during the school year, but has struggled online. Like, just that is really hard. And then vice versa, you have some students who weren't doing well, but they're thriving. You know, this self-paced learning is just what they needed. And then let me check in with my teacher, get my lesson, and I'll come, you know, be off. And then I can kind of be self-paced, you know. And so it does make it accommodates those different learners. And then we've even had conversations about what it will look like when we go back. If we do have students who are learning online, who will be those teachers in our building who will provide the virtual learning? And so even with creative scheduling of who's going to be that designated person. So even, for example, my school, we came up with our own virtual committee, so that those things that that's trickling down from the county level. Okay, now you all tell us, you know, what would that look like for our particular school and our particular city? So I think that's important, making sure you have buy-in from your staff members, because it just gives you a different perspective.
Correct.
That's awesome. One of the things I wanted to kind of talk about is still along the lines of the social emotional learning, but there was an article in Education Week, and the article was titled, "As Schools Stay Closed and Student Morale Slumps, Educators Worry About Mental Health." And there was a quote in the article. It says, "The more low-income students a district serves, the more concerned educators were about students getting the help they need. And in districts where more than 3/4 of students come from low-income families, 50% of their teachers and district leaders said they were very concerned about students receiving adequate mental health services. In districts where less than a quarter of students come from low-income families, 33% of educators say they were very concerned." I don't know if your state has had conversations about cuts in budget and things of that nature, with whether it's for hiring or just trying to plan for doing more with less. And we already know that certain schools or communities are really depend on that state funding or federal funding, things of that nature. Have you all talked about that? And so would that impact your community?
Yes, the budget cuts are actually right around the corner. However, I was ahead of the game. For the most part, the 14 schools that I was actually serving, it was something that I implemented immediately. The 5,192 students that I actually serve at those 14 schools, and those 416 employees, and those 14 principals and 27 assistant principals, they've already been through the training. Now we have new staff members that has actually come along at those particular schools. So if the funding piece isn't available to bring the Capturing Kids' Hearts trainers in,
Right.
we still have a system and a specific culture that's embedded in that school, and we can train those new people with what we've learned and how we've been doing business at our school. And this is how the culture is at our school, and actually have sort of a mini professional development at the school. And but for those schools who Title I funding get cut, please look at grants. Please look into your counseling department. Please look into your special education department for funding, to see if they can provide some assistance with bringing in speakers to actually, even if you have to train a trainer, my method. There's a variety of ways, and you have to get very creative, and there's no way we can go into 2020, 2021 without a solid social and emotional learning plan in place first, before we delve into any curriculum, any diagnostics and assessment. That will be catastrophic, because nobody's okay. The principal's not okay, the teacher's not okay, and the student's not okay. But if we plan properly and effectively and efficiently, everybody's going to be okay, because that's what we do as educators.
Right.
But that social emotional piece is going to have to be at the top of the list, because if you come in and the first week of school, okay, let's give them a Dibbles assessment and let's do a diagnostic from the county level. That's it.
That's it.
Your kids haven't warmed up for the educational marathon. They're going to fail. They're not going to do well. And guess what? I quit.
Right.
By October, your school year is over.
Right.
The students don't want to learn. The teachers don't want to teach. But if we go in that way, and that's how we have always gone in the school year.
It is.
But it has to be different now. It has to be different now. And this is where the teachers can stand up, the principals can stand up, and let the central office know, hey, this is what we need. This is what we need, and allow the adjustments to be made.
Awesome. Okay, so we have a few more minutes, and my last question or bullet point that I wanted to kind of address, and this is what this is my my fourth live that we've done, and we always try to bring in balance, work-life balance. So my question to you is, one, there's two-part question. One, how do you communicate to your administrators about the importance of work-life balance? And then how does Dr. Marcus Jackson implement work-life balance in his own life?
Well, actually, one of the things I actually conveyed to my principals is which a word Dr. Anthony Smith gave to me when I became a principal, because I was hot stuff as an AP, man. I was hot stuff. I couldn't wait to be a principal, man. I had all the answers.
Yeah, you are. I remember sitting in the office with Dr. Yeah, I do.
And he said, vulnerability. Two words he gave me. He gave me vulnerability, and he said delegation. Those are two important words for an administrator. And when my brother committed suicide, he called me 17 times before he did it. And my mentor, Dr. Mildred McCoy, was actually there at Point South Elementary School that day. And she asked me, did I tell my staff? And I said, no. And she was like, why? And I was like, well, I don't want nobody to feel sorry for me and all that. And she was like, if that happened to one of your teachers, would you want to know? And I said, absolutely. And she pointed me, she touched me on my head. She said, you selfish, Dr. Jackson. You want people to be vulnerable to you, but you don't want to be vulnerable to people. I called a staff meeting after school. I told them what happened. Man, my staff came together. I didn't have an office referral for about 2-3 months because my staff literally had my back. So in their grade levels, which is something they should have been doing anyway, they had a little system set up. Okay, right. My child act bad, he comes to your room. This child act bad, he's coming to your room. Matter of fact, if he act bad in both classrooms, we're gonna send him to another grade level. He's not gonna act bad with the fifth graders. So they put systems in place, so vulnerable and delegation. Principals, you don't know how to do it all. You don't know it all. Don't act like you know it all, and stop pretending you know it all. Find your pockets of brilliancy and excellence, and allow those individuals to help you and trust them. I'm talking about on some of those big projects.
They truly trust, yeah.
Yeah, give them some of that. Give them something that's going to test them and test your trust, as opposed to just a task for them to do. So those two words. So that's how I constantly remind them to balance themselves, being vulnerable, talk to me and tell me when something's wrong with you, and delegation. And but on my end, I'm a workaholic. That's tough for me to follow my own advice. I'm gonna just be honest.
I know. I try to tell my husband that. I was like, and he was like, you do tell everybody else what to do, but you don't do it yourself. I was like, because if I get them right, then I can fall back. That's
I'm actually and I've actually did that. Actually, I've been vulnerable, which is another strength of mine. After that incident at Point South Elementary School, So I've always opened up to my staff. For example, when my mom was diagnosed with dementia and I was going back and forth, I even posted about it. I posted her journey until
Yep,
she
I
died.
followed you.
Yeah, so I was vulnerable with my staff. I delegated things to them. I had 4 teams operating in each one of my schools, and everybody on that team had something to do. So that's how I balance my work life and home life. One of the things I do when I'm home, that's it. That's it. I turn it off. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. Don't talk to me. Don't call me. Now I have my work phone with me.
Right,
The
because yes,
superintendent
the
called.
24/7. Right,
Yeah, if that superintendent called, one of
right.
my principals call is actually urgent. But then I'll get the need, and then I'm gone. And then I'm digressing. I'm actually preparing for the next day. But that's what you have to do. You have to turn it off. You have to, just like a light switch. It's hard, but you have to turn it off because your own family and your own children is actually suffering, and that's what's been revealed most through this pandemic.
Yeah,
I mean, whoa! I mean, we've been so busy at work.
yeah.
You and your partner, y'all don't even know each other. But y'all never had to be
Working.
around. Y'all never had to be
Right.
around each other that long since you've known each other. Isn't that sad?
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten so busy. Well, I don't even really truly know you.
Right.
We've been married for 13 years, but we've been working.
Reacquainting yourself.
Yeah, we've been working, spending a little time, working, spending a little time, but we're spending this much of work. And you got to get that here. You got to get that here. So you got to have that balance. And I need to follow my own advice with that.
I know. We're so good about giving it to others, but boy, because I'm a lot better than I used to. I don't care what anybody says. And I know my mom is probably watching because she stays on me. You're on the computer again. I know I'm a lot better than I used to be. And this pandemic has kind of brought out different things and different emotions. And for me as a principal, I still worry about, what I don't have control over, because I'm used to being able to be in the building and I can see my staff, I can see my students, I can look at their faces, their demeanor, I know they're okay. And that bothers me because I can't see, how they're doing. Like you could tell me one thing I can't see. And so that's something I had to work on. And then also, like you said, cutting it off. Like my personal phone doesn't have my work email. I keep those separate because I don't want it dinging, and I'll intentionally leave my phone in another room so I won't be tempted to look at the emails or things that pop up or things of that nature. And then and then also trying to be respectful of my staff members' time and not calling them after hours and things of that nature too.
Right.
And I had to stop because in my mind I'm thinking when I send emails, I am at night when everyone's asleep, that's my time, but not realizing that for some staff members, when they get the ding, they're doing the same thing. So I had to even cut myself off from sending late emails because I'm thinking I'm getting ahead of the game, but it's causing anxiety to others who might be up or have their phone near them. It's ding, 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 dinging. So,
And you wrote them something like, would you stop by the office in the morning? And now they can't sleep all night because they got to go to the principal's office and they wonder, are they in trouble? Shame on you.
Yes, I had to stop. And it wasn't even like that, but I had to stop doing that to think about that. And so, good thing for Google, you can time the email. So yeah, I had to time stop. And they would check me, like, why were you on the computer at 3 o'clock in the morning? I'm like, what? Oh, sorry, I'm thinking. So, and it wasn't to them necessarily, but just, email to the staff. But yeah, so you're right. So that's something I definitely have to continue to work on. Okay. So the last thing, and I know it's a little bit over 5 minutes over, I don't want you to leave without telling everyone the story about, first of all, tell us the name of the book, the first children's book, and then tell us why you wrote the book.
Yes, that was actually my first children's book that that went, it was actually sold in 13 different countries. And the title of the book was Because My Teacher Said I Can. That is actually sold on Amazon, and you can find some specifics if you just Google Because My Teacher Said I Can. But it was a story about an interaction that I saw between a teacher and a student at Hawthorne Elementary School. This little student name was Amari, and he was in first grade. Amari was a great student, but Amari just had his challenges just like every child does. Amari will always raise his hand, but Amari will get the answers wrong all the time. But that never stopped him from trying. And if you know anything about kids, the younger they are, the more brutally honest they are as well.
Yes.
So Amari got called everything under the book. Amari was very upset, agitated, and frustrated, and he lost it. So one of the kids called him stupid. Amari grabbed a pen from the teacher and tried to stab the other student. Amari knocked down all the computers, knocked over the desk. He threw something at the teacher. I think he hit her and nicked her here. Her name was Miss Dennis. I think Miss Dennis is Dr. Dennis now. She's still in Clayton County in some capacity. I think she does something with early childhood learning because she recently reached out to me. And I had to, my office was right across from our classroom. I heard the commotion. I got up and two students ran in my office. Come get Amari. He's trying to kill people. And so I actually, hello?
Yeah, I see you. You just got twisted upside
What
down.
happened?
We're here. Can you hear us? Uh-oh. Did we lose Dr. Jackson? Uh-oh. I hope we didn't lose him. Okay. So we'll keep talking. So guys, I'm sorry for that. Dr. Jackson's probably had a little technical difficulty, but I wanted to thank Dr. Jackson for coming on today. Hopefully he'll get connected before we finish on out, get connected. And I appreciate him coming on. I hope you were able to gain some golden nuggets for today. Again, we've been talking with Dr. Marcus Jackson, and have a great day. Bye. We lost him. Okay. So you all, Dr. Jackson was on here with us, and we talked about three things. One, we talked about post-pandemic, and then we also talked about mental awareness for our students, and then our work-life balance. So stay tuned for in June. This is our last May live. Stay tuned for in June, and we have some dynamic leaders that will be coming on with us and speaking with us about other topics, especially women in leadership. So I hope that you will be able to join us in June and have a wonderful end of the school year. If you are a teacher or administrator closing out the school year, and students, this is the end of the road for you. So congratulations for making it to the end. And this is a historic year. So you'll always remember this and be able to tell your children about it. So take care and make sure you have work-life balance. Thank you so much.